Today I'll be looking at three films. I noticed a trend. Three films released in the same year. All of them are female-led Die Hard clones. The first being Daisy Ridley in the movie Cleaner. Then we've got G20 on Amazon Prime with Viola Davis. And then we have Bride Hard with Rebel Wilson. So I have the first one will be Bride Hard. We'll talk about that one first. Bride Hard is a surreal experience. For a little backstory, this movie's got a modest budget of $20 million. It stars Rebel Wilson as Sam, a badass secret agent who neglects her best friend, Betsy, and her duties as maid of honor are taken away. So she becomes outcast, but she shows up at the wedding anyway to support her friend. However, the wedding party is attacked by mercenaries that want to rob the rich family that Betsy is marrying into. There's a lot to take in for this film. For starters, the movie's already leaving theaters after only being in theaters for about 6 days. Or 7. The theater that I watched at isn't even playing at full show times. It's just the afternoons. And the movie's box office didn't even get announced by box office sites. That's how little the movie made. This movie screams streaming service fodder. It's, first off, all the action movies that came out in 2025, none of them have done well, regardless of if they're female-led or male-led. It's just people seem to be not going to action pictures. I'm not talking about aliens, sci-fi, fantastical, fantasy. I'm talking about straight action, like Den of Thieves 2, Mission Impossible, The Final Reckoning, Ballerina, just none of them. So this Bride Hard movie is a conundrum because who paid for this movie and who's it for? Rebel Wilson hasn't been a box office draw since 2019. Now she's 45. She, lost a whole bunch of weight, so she's great in that regard. Good for her. But this movie feels so artificial. The opening sequence of this film is literally a sort of montage of two friends growing up, childhood friends. However, one moves away. Flash forward 30 years. Now they're at the airport going to Paris. They literally have a freeze frame and introduce how they know the main character. It's so odd. It's literally freeze frame future sister-in-law, freeze frame college roommates, freeze frame the maid of honor and the bride, and it felt so cold and weird. There's no music. It's just the movie can't even be bothered to be oh, I can't believe it's been this long, we know you from college or whatever. It doesn't even want to give you the exposition in a speaking way. So we quickly cut to a club, and we find out Sam's a secret agent. She's actually supposed to be doing a mission the next day. However, it got moved to the day she's having her bachelorette party for Betsy. So she does this, finagling around to get the table she wants. However, the mission goes wrong and she goes rogue and she ends up ditching her bachelorette party in order to stop some villains from getting away with a super weapon. And this whole sequence is just really, you don't buy Rebel Wilson as an action hero. The editing and the filming is just so done in a way to cover up the fact that she's not that physical. And she stops the villain, and even that little subplot is cliche. And then she gets her role as maid of honor taken away. So she shows up at the wedding anyway to support her friend. Everything's going well. We meet her fiance, the best man. We get more development for her, the other characters. And I gotta say, Divine Joyce Randolph is just really bad in this movie. I know she won an Oscar for The Holdovers, and there's an Oscar curse where you win an Oscar, the next movie you do pales in comparison. But this movie is just so unfunny, and she plays this hyper-sexualized woman who just says sexual things every 5 seconds, and it's not a joke, saying something like, "Ooh, I want to get with that man." That's not a joke. That's just a statement. If you had a guy, you swap the genders and it's just him saying I want to bang women, or I want to get with these honeys, or I can't wait to taste her, it would just feel so gross and like a pervy. So having Divine Joyce Randolph, that's all she does throughout the whole movie is basically lust after a reverend. And then she's got a pregnant friend who has her own little subplot with her husband, which is kind of amusing. But I only laughed 3 or 4 times in this movie, and my crowd, there's about half a theater full, but there was no belly laughs in this movie. This movie is lacking any hilarious set piece or comedic set piece. It's just painfully unfunny. It almost feels like an anti-movie. This movie is just so like threadbare and so bare bones and so like lazily written and just undercooked. It's almost like it was a first draft or something. Literally, the movie just bends over backwards to allow things to happen. So basically, the wedding is about to happen, and they get overtaken by the mercenaries and the villain Kurt, and he wants to get into their vault. So he has to wait 30 minutes with each. There's 4 rings and 4. What's it called? The eye scanner things. You have to wait 30 minutes. So they got to be there for an hour and a half to unlock the vault. So while they're doing this, Sam got in a fight with Betsy right before walking down the aisle for no reason. It didn't even feel like a real fight, to be honest. They needed to get Sam out of the way so she wasn't gotten taken hostage by the bad guys. And it just felt really like just out of place. So she's like running around fighting bad guys. She has this sequence where she uses curling irons as nunchucks to defeat a guy, and it just feels really lazy and like a little bit suspenseful, because Rebel Wilson, she's not the most athletic looking woman, and seeing her have trouble with one guy is a little bit realistic. But then the comedic elements just don't really fit, and this movie isn't rated R. A movie like Spy by Paul Feig is rated R. So if you don't believe that Melissa McCarthy is a physical actress, having her, run into the room. I'm saying that Melissa McCarthy doesn't seem like she would be a physical threat, but when you give her a gun or a knife and she like slashes and shoots bad guys in the head, you believe that she's a dangerous force. But this movie doesn't have that luxury, because Rebel Wilson, she isn't allowed to do that. This was like a PG-13 movie, so all the kills are kind of like, off screen or bloodless, or just knocking out bad guys, or she gets a superficial cut here and there. So it's really hard to buy her as an action heroine, even in a comedy film. Like there's a sequence they fight in a kitchen, and she's using frying pans to like defeat the enemies, and she might as well grab 2 giant salamis and swung them around like nunchucks, because this movie feels so lazy in that regard too. Like the way she defeats enemies just using random stuff. It's like the villains are just falling over. They're supposed to be like trained mercenaries, and some of them she has trouble physically fighting, and then others they literally just like fall over when she walks into the room. So the stakes are all over the place. It's not a serious movie. And what's even weirder is this movie's directed by Simon West. He did Con Air and Lara Croft Tomb Raider and a few others. Pretty solid director, but he's doing this slop now, and it's not like the cast are bad. Like Stephen Dorff's having fun as a villain. Justin Hartley plays a dopey best man. The fiance, the groom, is hilarious. He's kind of like a dopey rich guy, but no laughs from the woman's side. Like Anna Camp is there, but she seems a little bit miscast. She's usually good as like a sort of bitchy sort of villain in this character, like in the Pitch Perfect films. And this one, she's just like a regular woman, and she doesn't have that great comedic presence to bounce off of Rebel Wilson. And the jokes are just really unfunny. They only land like 1 out of every 25 or so, and the plot's your basic plot. Rebel Wilson runs around fighting the villains, and then she's got to basically stop their little heist, and then she does. And the movie has Sherry Cola in a small role, but woefully underutilized. And the thing that made me realize that this film is awful, it's the script. It's not the actors. The actors and actresses aren't awful. Like, I know Rebel Wilson, people accuse her of having Ozempic or whatever. I actually like Rebel Wilson. I liked her in the Pitch Perfect films. I liked her in Isn't It Romantic? Brothers Grimsby. I find her hilarious, but this script is just really bad in this film. Even if you swapped her out with Sherry Cola or like someone a little bit more action oriented, it just wouldn't work because the script is so lazy, and you can't have the hard edge of the violence because it's PG-13. So it's just mainly women running around like screaming at people and jokingly blowing them up, and being the villains being incompetent, and just sort of, it feels like an SNL sketch, to be honest, at times. This movie, it's just really surreal at how unfunny it is. Like, none of the jokes really landed. Most of the jokes come from like a person in the wedding party saying something, or like a quip from one of the side characters, which is just weird. So, Bride Hard, I'm not surprised the movie didn't make money, but this movie like wasn't made to be bad on purpose. You don't write a movie intending for it to go to streaming. So I don't understand how like threadbare this film is. It just feels like an anti-movie. Like you watch something like Rush Hour because it's funny and it's action-packed and it's firing in all cylinders. You've got the mouth, you've got Jackie Chan's fists, you've got the crime element, the good story, the riffing, the Jackie Chan action sequences, a surefire hit, you know? What happens when you have an action comedy that's just action scenes are like shakily like asked to like have a body double in there. They're not funny. The jokes aren't funny. The plot's just your usual mix of Bridesmaids and Die Hard. And even worse, this movie, like the pitch for it was Bridesmaids meets Die Hard. And that's an insult because both of those I consider classics. Like Bridesmaids is pretty darn funny. I would consider that a comedy classic. And Die Hard's an action classic. So this movie doesn't even get to like 1/10 of those films. And I guess the movie that most reminded me of is Violent Night, the Santa Claus Die Hard movie. That movie, you know, at least had the benefit of having a hard R rating, so that makes it like a little bit different. And also Santa's like a magical being. It's not like a Santa impersonator. And David Harbour is huge, so you can, and they even give him a backstory of having like a Viking warrior kind of thing. So he wasn't just a fat man running around in a suit tackling people and stuff. And then, you know, that movie gets a little silly too, but at least it stuck with its tone and it was entertaining as an action movie and as a comedy. This movie just is nothing. It's just, you don't have the laughs, you don't have the action. You got a decent cast with nothing to do. So Bride Hard is just woefully bad, and I have to give it a 0 out of 10. G20 is our next movie of our female-led Die Hard action movie clones of 2025. Now, this movie is on Amazon Prime. It's about President Danielle Sutton. She is the president of America, and she goes to the G20 summit to start a new proposal in which poor farmers will be able to use Bitcoin and cryptocurrency to buy stuff instead of keeping their money, you know, held in a sock somewhere for seed season. And she wants to get in there so she can help boost the economy of the rest of the world by getting really poor people involved in like transactions and things like that. So she's going there. However, she's been embarrassed by her teenage daughter, whose name I do not remember. Demetrius is her son. I forget the name of the daughter. Selena? Yeah, maybe. Or Serena. Her daughter Serena is like a child genius. She's 17 and she was able to hack something to escape the White House and go drinking at a bar or something. It was really, and got caught on camera too, so she's in hot water. However, there's also the first husband, and he's like trying to keep the family unit together. So in order to improve their image, she decides to take her children with her to the summit in order to put on the air of a strong family unit, because she's got a lot of naysayers, especially a British man. The British leader, maybe? I'm not sure. Anyways, at the G20 summit, however, they are hijacked by Rutledge, played by Anthony Starr, who's really great in this role. He's a little unhinged. He plays a villain, an Aussie villain, who's hijacked the security teams with his own men. So they show up, they blow up the soldiers that are there, and then they show up and they're like, we're taking everyone hostage. And I gotta say, I was not expecting this movie to be a laugh riot. This movie is a cinematic atrocity. I haven't had one of these in a while, but it's always fun to watch a movie not knowing if it's going to be one. And this movie was. This movie is so pretentious and so up its own ass that it feels like a parody of Die Hard. There are just so many cringeworthy moments. There are multiple moments where characters just say like, oh, they don't like you because you're awesome, Danielle Sutton. You're so cool. You're so awesome. You're like the best female president of all time. And it happens so many times at the beginning of the movie. They're like glazing her. And every time it reminded me of The Room. Because like in The Room, everyone says like, oh, you're Johnny. You're such a great guy. You treat your wife great. Johnny, you're such a great guy. The same thing happens in this movie a little bit. And then the movie, it takes a little while to get started, but then the action sets up and we're not quite given a Die Hard clone. Danielle escapes the terrorists taking over with the help of her #1 bodyguard, the Korean leader's wife, this lady who's like used to run the IMF, and then the British guy that doesn't like her. So the little squad of them are escaping And there's just so many unintentional funny parts to this movie, because it's trying to be like this super serious action thriller, but then the plot is so over the top. Okay, so the terrorists, they take all the world leaders hostage and they put them in a room and they're like, we want you to read this sentence. And he's like, wait a second, if I read this sentence, you'll be able to make a so convincing deep fake of me that you'll release it on the web and destroy the global markets. So the first guy is Korean, he refuses to do it, so Rutledge cuts his ear off, and then he makes the rest of the leaders say the sentence, the phrase, and then their super AI program that's so awesome that cannot be detected as AI starts to leak out to the world, and people think, oh, everyone's trying to, we need to buy Bitcoin because everyone else is, and then it makes the price of Bitcoin go up. So he's shorting the cryptocurrencies, and it's a really dumb plot, but they say it with such conviction, and it's like almost a sci-fi concept, but it's just so funny how serious, and like, there's even a guy that's like, that's AI. He's like, you won't be able to prove that. People are too dumb. And there's a sequence where Sutton and her bodyguard are trying to go from one place to the next. Oh, no, there's a scene before that. Okay, so the first action sequence is in an elevator. They climb up above the elevator in order to, because they don't have key cards. Only the villains have key cards that they can use to go throughout the building and stuff. So she falls into them, fights like 4 of them. They manage to kill 2, and then ends up becoming a Sutton versus a guy, and her bodyguard versus a guy. And she literally can't fight, and she starts getting choked out like immediately, and it's so awkward. And she gets saved by the others, which is kind of funny. And then she manages to get the gun, but then she's all like, oh, I better be careful. And she almost shoots her own guy, and then she doesn't. And then he's all like, you're worthy of having a gun now. Because she has this backstory where she's got PTSD, and she saved a child from a burning building in Fallujah. And because of that, she was able to climb the ranks to become president of the United States. And it's just, I'm sorry, the movie just seems so serious. And there's like really like serious scenes in this movie, but like they come off as really pretentious. I found out that Viola Davis, I love her, but she produces this movie and she had a lot of obstacles to make it done. And this movie feels like a power fantasy, because she's not only like the great, awesome female president that destroys all haters and all threats physical, but like the fight scenes are just really laughable, because like a lot of characters don't shoot each other for no reason, and then they have to have this big fight. Like, okay, so after the elevator fight, they're trying to sneak from one place to another, and there's 5 hostages in the kitchen with 2 men. So they each decide to take on 2 more. She refuses to let them, leave them, stranded, and she gets her own guy shot. And he like literally throws like a power cable into like water on the floor and makes the whole floor electrified. And it makes it so dangerous for the both of them, because if he just fell, they'd be dead. And the table they're on is metal. It's a metal table. They should be dead. Oh my god, I just realized that now. And then like Sutton's okay in her fight scene. She basically gets the drop on a guy, but she refuses to shoot him for no reason, even though he's got like a automatic machine gun. And then they just start fighting, and she manages to like brain him twice with a frying pan. Not even a frying pan, it's a cast iron. And he just gets up, and it's just, the movie has like a couple other scenes. I don't know if it's a budget issue. There's another scene where someone gets stabbed in the neck and then slashed, and there's no blood. So I don't know if it's like a budget thing or a rating thing, because there is some violence with the hostages, but there's just some scenes that are just bloodless, and it feels really awkward and cheap. There's also like a limo flip scene, or like a armored vehicle flip scene that's really cheap looking. So I don't think this movie had a very large budget, which is why the movie went to streaming. But the movie's just full of like scenes like this, where like it's supposed to be like this super tense action sequence, and then it's over quick. For example, her daughter Serena, she's like a super hacker, because she's like hacked that thing at the beginning of the movie, and she's all like, hey, I can hack a thing later, but you need to get me one of those things from the lobby. She doesn't even know the name of the thing is, because the writer doesn't know what the thing is. And she just gets it. And there's like a whole subplot with her kids and her husband being taken hostage and stuff. There's another great scene where she's fighting a henchman. She just happens to run out of ammo. He literally comes out of the elevator and he's all like, let's dance, Madam President. And she could just like, drop her gun and grab another gun from like the 10 dead guys she just shot in the dark. But instead they just have a fist fight, and he starts like beating the holy hell out of her. They cut away to another scene, and when they cut back, she's just winning the fight, and then she just chokes him out. It's so like lazy, and I guess Anthony Starr's having a fun time. He's playing like an unhinged Aussie soldier, but there's a scene where he just gets stabbed and he's like, I'm dead, and then he's not, and then it just leaves. He disappears off screen. And there's so many weird melodrama moments too, involving like people getting shot and stuff. And there's like a scene where what's his name, the villain, he's all like, I'm gonna just shoot a hostage for no reason, and then he does, and then another guy tries to take a swing at him and he just like guts him with his special knife, and then he doesn't use that knife again in the final fight either. And it's just a really hokey, pretentious action picture. It's described as Die Hard meets Murder at 1600, a little bit of Air Force One, but this is definitely not Air Force One. The movie is just so hokey that that British guy is all like, I don't like you, but then he watches her like kill all these guys, and he's all like, now I have respect for you because you're awesome at killing people. It's so hokily written, and not supposed to be. It's not supposed to be funny. I had more fun laughing with this movie than I did with Bride Hard. So I can't give G20 a proper rating. I have to give it a cinematic atrocity score of 6 out of 10 as a cinematic atrocity. The last of our female protagonist Die Hard clone movies is Cleaner. This one is directed by Martin Campbell, who is a pretty solid director, you know, giving us stuff like The Mask of Zorro and Green Lantern. No, I'm just kidding, not Green Lantern. Casino Royale is really good. But this one's about Joey, played by Daisy Ridley, whom I really like. She plays a window washer for a very lucrative energy company. And she is having trouble, personal family trouble, because her brother is being kicked out of another placement because he's like a genius hacker, and he's got autism, obviously. So the movie right there is kind of, you know, not harmful, but it's just another worn trope we've seen before: genius, autism person, and you know, he has freakouts and stuff. So it's not a very good representation. It's something cliche that we've seen before. But anyways, Joey's late for work, so she's got to stay longer. Meanwhile, Michael has to stay at the building, so everything's going down, and there's a big party going on in the building for the record profits, and all the rich bigwigs are there. Two brothers own the building, so they're kind of jerky. However, the party gets knocked out by gas. The Cirque du Soleil performers are actually eco-terrorists that want to take down this evil company. They've apparently done some nasty stuff in other countries, and they do bribes to stay up afloat, and they can exploit poor people, and they're just straight up really like bad things. So Marcus is their leader. He shows up with his eco-terrorists, knock out everyone with gas, but manages to give oxygen to the 7 or so main hostages, and he wants them to confess their crimes. They'll upload it for the internet for everyone to watch, and then they'll be let go. It'll be a no-killing sort of thing. However, one of the other eco-terrorists takes over. He wants to end everything in bloodshed. Meanwhile, Joey is stuck on the window machine thing, the lift, because the control room is overtaken by terrorists. This is where the movie fails. Joey spends like an hour of this movie stuck on that stupid outside of the building, man. This is not an action movie. This is more of a thriller with an occasional action sequence, which really bothered me because I want Die Hard, but different and the same. In fact, this movie, people don't know, might be based off of an older Jackie Chan film that never got made. Back in like 2000 or 2001, he was going to do a movie called Nosebleed about a window washer who has to defeat terrorists who've overtaken the World Trade Center. However, or was it one of the towers, in fact? I'm not sure, but 9/11 happened, so that movie didn't happen, and he ended up doing The Tuxedo instead. That movie never got produced, and I guess is reborn in this film. However, Nosebleed would be full of like Jackie Chan, you know, throwing soap water into a guy's eyes and using the squeegee to smack him in the face like a impromptu weapon. This movie doesn't have any of that. The first hour of this movie is just hostage taking and talking and boring stuff and eco-terrorist filler, and Joey spends most of the movie just stuck outside the building. We don't get our first action sequence until about an hour and 15 minutes into an hour and 40 minute movie, so that's kind of like a drag. However, when she does finally start fighting, there's some kind of comedic action sequences that aren't supposed to be comedic. I don't know how the budget of this film was used, but like, it's a low budget film, 25 million. There's like a scene where she's fighting a guy and it almost feels like a horror movie kill because they use CGI blood. It's just so awful. There's another scene where she's fighting another terrorist and like the terrorist gets horrifically burned and you'd think that would like take the person out, but they're just like going at it. And the death of that henchman is definitely a little bit more comedic than it's willing to be. However, this movie doesn't reach the level of cinematic atrocity because the rest of the movie isn't funny, or it's just kind of like a thriller pretending to be an action picture. And Daisy really does have a couple of robust action sequences near the end. She's got 3. 2 of them are comedic, but the last finale's not. Yeah, but overall the movie's just kind of a flatline. It's not that thrilling. I do like the eco-terrorist angle. It adds a little something different, but she spends most of the movie stuck outside the building, so not much else going on, and heavy-handed themes. So it's weird to see Clive Owen get underutilized in a movie like this, because he's like he was pretty big back in the early 2000s, and so was Martin Campbell. So now they're doing like mid-budget, mediocre action films. So I give Cleaner a 5 out of 10.